Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast, connecting kill team communities across the globe. If you're passionate about the tactical skirmish game that brings together strategy, lore, and creativity, you are in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay updated with our latest episodes. If you want to support the show, check out our Patreon. Your support means a lot to us. Follow us by using the social media links in the podcast description for all the latest news, and be sure to leave a review to let us know what you think. All right, you guys, I want to take a quick moment to let you all know about Crossfire Games that is sponsoring this episode, a couple additional episodes as well. Crossfire Games makes some super cool tokens, token holders, measuring tools, all sorts of awesome goodies. They're super, super cool, really like high-quality 3D printed stuff. You can grab it from the Etsy link in the show notes and use the coupon code JUSTANOTHERKILLTEAM, all one word, all uppercase, at checkout to get a little discount and to help us out. Thanks for tuning in, and here's today's episode where we chat with Augustin from France about Fellgor Ravagers and Ratlings, and some other random miscellaneous stuff.
Vespid feel way worse than Rekkas, because you need to roll sixes, but then you get, like, your benefit is your gun just does 6 damage.
Does actual damage. I was actually tempted to play them. Like, I don't
They're
know
like
why.
cool, but 9 operatives is not enough because you only get 2 actions, and for you to get like all of your rules, you have to spend both of them. So like, you're just standing around shooting people. It's just, and you're like, with all of your rules, you get 6 damage.
Yeah, it's just damage output. You just put the math into like a calculator, and you're like, well, then I'm just not doing anything to a Space Marine. I'm not even
and then you don't have, like,
killing.
Yeah, you don't even have like extra APL, so it's like you can either like chip a 7 wound model or do an action, and it's like, yikes.
Yeah, and then you look at Rekkas, and Rekkas, when they chuck dice, it's like, oh, it might not do anything, but it might also deal 12 damage. So it's like the delta between the two teams of like, oh, we're going to stand around and do nothing and just chuck dice, is one of them is like, you do a little bit of chip, and the other one you're just dead.
Yeah, it's very fun. I feel like, they could give like some APL generation to Vespids, and they'd be fine. I don't think
there's probably enough. I mean, they could just give them the other operative. The box comes with 10 Vespid, and like they seem like, maybe the easiest team to just give an extra dork to, because their shooting sucks anyways.
Yeah. I mean, just yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy how weak the shooting is for how many shooting rules they have.
Yeah, you get the balance, you get all the lethal, you get potentially
balance,
lethal 5, saturate, piercing,
dev 2. You're like, cool, I hit you 3 times with hitting on 4s. I've done 6 damage. Yeah, I was like, oh man, they sound neat on paper, but there's not enough 7 wound teams for you to abuse, and then you can't kill an elf, and they always kill you.
Yeah.
If when you spend a communion point on an action, the mission action is free, that's what I would do. That's the first thing I would change. It's like, you can do mission actions, but if you spend a communion point, you do it for free.
I think it feels like most of the shooting centric teams were pretty safe this edition compared to, I think Inquisition stands out as like the only shooting centric team that had a lot of power budget in the switch over to this edition, at the release of the edition. Maybe not right now, but on the changeover, they were the best shooting team because they could both do a little bit of melee, and they had enough shooting rules to do it all.
Yeah, that's the issue. They're the best shooting team because they can also do melee.
Yeah. And right now, I think Vetguard got a big enough change where their shooting is like acceptable. It's just, and like the free ploy means that you have accurate 1 and saturate at all times, which is like just at the line of like, maybe this is playable.
I mean, it means that your melter might actually do something. So like that's already good.
Yeah, and now, ceaseless, accurate 1, saturate all the time for every gun with 13 operatives. It's bad.
It's still not very good because your guns do nothing. But it's fun. At least it's playable. Like,
I think, and then Ratlings are a new shooting team that can also do melee because they've got the three guys that just stand around.
Yes, but they have such insane upsides. I think this team is potentially the best in the game if you play them on certain layouts. Like certain ITD layouts, they are completely insane. Like they are,
You
just
just
can't
can
play
never
against
you can never touch the midline, right? So we brought you on here, Augustin, world championship attender, to talk
Yeah.
about Ratlings and Fellgor, just because Ratlings now we've had enough time to digest them, and I've been curious. They haven't been doing amazingly week to week on stats, but they've been doing okay. And then Fellgor, everyone just kind of expects that they will be like it's like elves came up, and now Fellgor are just in the back waiting to like hit the elves in the head.
Yeah, I mean, this is
And
this is
that
why
has
Fellgor
kind
is
of
good.
been. Yeah, and like Chaos Cults are like right. Looks like Fellgor and Chaos Cults are like right in the back. They're gonna just like hit people in the head again.
No, but Chaos Cult is far from being good enough right now. Yeah,
They had a good
I just
weekend. So last
think
weekend they did have like an 80% win rate, but that was literally one person in Britain smashing
yeah,
everybody, and they were
yeah,
like
yeah.
4 players. So it wasn't like a huge player base. It was just one person went to 2 small 3-person tournaments and destroyed the 2 3-person tournaments, which is pretty funny. So like
That is really funny.
yeah, as far as like what the meta is, everyone like elves are good right now because they fight the Astartes well, and they fight the horde teams pretty good. And then right behind them is the wall of 10 wound dorks that just stat check the elves.
Oh yeah, I mean, Fellgor is the best because they stat check the elves, and they can actually fight elites that aren't legionaries. I mean, they can fight legionaries, but it requires
They
like
couldn't
pretty high
before.
skill
Like
level.
this data slate basically reopened the game back for Fellgor to be relevant.
Yeah,
Because when
yeah, yeah.
Legionary had -1 to hit, a Fellgor was never going to do anything on the first charge or the frenzy charge or anything, and the Legion would just hit you and you would just die.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, now it's actually a playable matchup, though it is definitely not favored, but it is definitely playable.
How's I think the main matchup I've seen look really hard for Fellgor now is Plague Marines.
Oh, haven't really run the numbers on that one. I don't think it's good. But you can just charge them and just not fight them and just clog up the middle objective, and you play like and just try to play like attack ops and all that stuff. And I think it's possibly playable because they have like really low damage melee weapons, and if they start falling back from you, they just don't have the APL to kill you afterwards. So it's
Or
like
get
potentially
anything
really
done.
bad.
Yeah.
And you've got the Mangler, which kills anything. The Gorehorn, if you give him +1 APL, is still fighting twice, with possibly +1 damage on the crit, ambush on both fights. You've got 2 models that possibly kill one of theirs, and if you've got the gong on the point, they just do like what? They're melee operatives. They're gonna do 4 damage,
3
4
damage, 3-4 damage. Yeah. Once you're poisoned, the dork does a little bit more. If they could take a couple extra dorks, maybe the match would be more scary in some ways.
If he sends his leader on the objective, you just send in like the Mangler, and you're just fine with the trade. And just don't care, because then afterwards, what do you fight? You fight like there's like one operative that fights in melee, and what are they going to do? Shoot you? You're going to retain like a save dice every time. They can't crit you if the gong's there. Like it sounds like you can't really fight them in melee on your own activation, but you still do Fellgor stuff.
So the empty charges are still a big part of the current Fellgor plan into the Astartes matchups. I mean, because the way I describe Fellgor to the people who are trying to learn Fellgor is the first rule of Fellgor is don't die in your activation, and step 2 is do as much damage as possible. You only go to step 2 if you can do step 1.
Yeah, actually, this team is if there's one team that's going to teach you about breakpoints and actually hitting them, is Fellgor, because you've got so many ways of doing a bit of chip damage, and then you have so many weapons that if you do 1 more damage, actually do something. It's a team that, for example, when you play into teams like Space Marine, Space Marines, there's like really tiny adjustments you can make to the way you play and to which models you put forward to actually get that 1 more damage.
I think
which puts them into range.
the dude with a tiny nub
Vandal?
hand generally is one of the good ones because he runs around and does a couple extra points of damage before the rest of your dudes go in.
I feel like this is one of the few guys I haven't been using
Oh,
as well as the others. The Vandal.
Because
Vandal
I know in the
pretty
past
nice.
Orion used the flux. I think it's the flux spray.
Flux spray, exactly.
Yeah, because you like run him up like over a couple dudes, and then you end and you like throw a crack grenade.
Oh yeah, with the +1 APL.
Yeah, so you can like yeet him an extra couple 2 inches. So for anyone who doesn't know what the flux spray does, He's the dude with the tiny little nub arm, and he is kind of like the Tasmanian devil. So when he runs by people, he like stabs them with the shank arm, and does I think D3+1 damage. So against elites, you hit the 2 wound breakpoint to put the elites down to a 12 wound model, which means your 4 or 5 damage profile as a Fellgor is now a 3-shot kill. So you can generally kill a Marine, whereas on 14 wounds, you're just not going to kill a Marine in any one combat step because 4 hits is impossible.
And there's a few of your operatives if you're playing Fellgor. For example, the +1 damage on a crit on a firefight ploy is actually really important, weirdly, in certain matchups. Because imagine you do 4 chip damage to a Space Marine, then all of a sudden your 4 or 5 damage melee weapon with ambush becomes 4/6. You strike for a crit, they're just dead in 2 hits. That is really important because then you don't die on your own charge, potentially, or you don't. Yeah, you just don't die on your own charge.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the first rule is don't die on your activation. If you can 2-shot them and take a hit, that's fine because that means that they have to kill you.
Fine.
Yeah. Fellgor, yeah, just crazy right now. Do you feel like they are the most of the S tier right now?
I feel like they are. Yeah, I do feel like they are the best team in the game. Just straight up, because they beat Void Dancers and Corsairs. I mean, I hate playing against Void Dancers. There's like a few things I hate more than playing against those teams. But they're such a bad matchup. Fellgor is such a bad matchup for them that I'm happy that Fellgor is in the meta, just to keep our teams in check. Yeah.
And then,
if you want to go first.
I was just going to ask about, like Fellgor are very strong right now. Do you feel like after having played them at a couple tournaments, doing well with them, that they have any teams that you're worried about playing outside of elites? Because in the past it was ostensibly elites that somewhat kept them in check. However, once the elites got nerfed into the ground in the last edition and were no longer relevant threats, like the Fellgor and all of the 10 wound melee guys, commandos being the other one for most of last edition, just like ran roughshod over the meta. So their natural counters right now are strong in that the Astartes are reasonably good. Do you feel like they are good counters to them, or do you feel like Fellgor right now, because they have all of their old buffs and some of their new buffs, like ambush being better, are in a spot where even their old counters don't really seem to be doing that well against them?
I still feel like elites pose a certain problem. They do things that really Fellgor hates. The fact that you can't charge them. The fact that they've got 3 APL, so they can afford to fall back and shoot you. Even worse with Angels of Death, being able to fall back for 1 APL and then shoot you twice.
Jason's favorite adaptive tactic. Mobile every time. It is actually
quite good into Fellgor. Yeah. Really, really good.
Yeah, I think on the day that they tell Angels of Death players that they can take whatever tactics they want before the game starts, the Angels of Death will shoot up to being probably like an A-tier team at least, because the flexibility would be massive on them.
I feel like they are quite good already. Like, I've played them and I played against them, and I'm like, yeah, this team is actually quite annoying to face in the way that they are really tough.
As long as you don't take the 40mm traps. Jason's out here saying, I'm just going to take 5 chainsword dudes and run at you. and have one AP fallback, so you could just like walk up to the midline and everybody has 3 aggressive actions they can do every turn.
Yeah, so it's like you don't want to charge them because with like dueler and tilting shields and chainswords, they're a nightmare to fight. And you can't just like MP charge them because they fall back and double shoot, and then the whole team just runs around tactical doctrine at all times, always double shooting, and then just like fending people off in melee, and is just like a shooty murder wall.
Yeah.
A shooty murder wall that takes charges, which is something that in this game is very good right now, because most good teams don't take charges, right? Like Void Dancers, Corsairs, all the 8 wound elf teams, they can only take 1 charge normally because you got one guy that breaks activation parity, and then you die.
Yes. But the issue with that is that if you consider the meta, like what's being played, what's really strong, you've got Void Dancers and Corsairs, which aren't good for that gameplay. Corsairs, basically, you've got 6 damage power weapons with possibly just a scratch. You've got the Pistolega, which just deletes the model Just goodbye to it. You've got all those tools, and then the void answer is just like I don't even have to think. I don't even have to speak about it. I think everybody knows what it does. You just charge. You've got the severe weapons, so they're gonna do 4-5. They're gonna crit and then hit. Not pay the CP actually, because that's fun. It's free.
Because
Yeah,
all the
love
players
that.
get once a turn, one of the ploys
Yeah.
gets free, and you do the
Oh, yeah.
combo the two separate turns where you need to be able to do a crit, then fall back and shoot, so you get it for free twice.
Yeah, and then so that's just one like dead Space Marine, and you've got to answer that. And the team is like super mobile, it's 3 APL. Like that's why I feel like Angel of Death is being kept away from like being really good. It's because you've got all the elves in the meta that are getting absolutely farmed by Fellgors.
And that's been the case in France, I take it.
I mean, our meta is like we don't have a lot of players that play like really optimized. Like they don't consider the meta actively, so I can't really say that. I just feel like that's my read on the meta. Like if you were to look for like the most efficient way to win, you'd look for a team that actually has a chance into most teams and that beats what's like top of the meta. And I feel like right now it is Fellgor, because you've got a chance into basically anything, except if you're playing Beta Decima, but that's not a subject. This map doesn't exist.
Thank goodness we
It's
pour
a
one
lie.
out for the soup can. The soup can has been emptied.
Just really like you've got a really good matchup into what's really popular, and you just have a chance into anything else. Like there's no real unplayable matchups.
Because
There's really bad
Fellgor,
ones. But
you've got like the fallback of I'm just gonna go in empty charge and see what happens on your turn instead of like trying to play an actual game. You can just
you can
move
just
up
do
on
that.
turn one super aggressively, empty charge, and just be like, all right, well, we'll see what happens. So you can make it a dice roll. And I think actually, the new Exaction squad are one of those teams that we saw in the stats. I think last week we were poking around the stats, and I think Exaction Squad had like 1 or 2 tournaments where they were able to check Fellgor, because now they hit on 3s and they hit on 4s and they stay on 4s. So the 5 shields you bring against Fellgor in a handful of matchups. I don't know if these are optimized players. This is just like a thing we poked and we're like, oh, it actually looks like it might have worked. Fixing the injury thing on the shields.
The very simple part, the very simple thing about Exaction is like, Fellgor, do you know how many brutal weapons that team has?
Yeah, it's like a bring a couple extra. You can just like bring extra warriors with brutal if you want.
Extra.
You actually count the weapons that don't have brutal in that team. Like, I feel like the Flux Spray doesn't have brutal. I could check that, but I think the rest of the team.
No, he's got the double parry ability.
Except like the support operative, but the rest I think has brutal. So what happens is that you just charge the Exaction, you fight him, and then if he doesn't roll a crit, he's just dead. He does 8 damage to you, then there's like the enemy team, they have to spend like 2 APLs killing you. That's still horrendous. That is still really bad. Yeah, it's playable.
It just turns into like a dice roll. It's like a 50-50 matchup rather than like a real like. Because right now, I think that's one of the theoretical counters is that you take five models that make all of the first charges a 50-50, and you never know where the 50-50 is going. But the thing is that if you live through a combat against a Fellgor, now your shield at least is not injured, so that same 50-50 happens again.
Again, yeah, it's
and then
actually quite annoying.
Some interesting tools to kind of instigate the empty charges, and like especially against Exaction Squad would be like the Vandal, for example. He charges in, then he does this giant like hammer swing, and you try to stage it if possible to hit like 2 or 3 models. If the opponent's not careful, and you literally just like run in there, you do a giant like chip damage thing to anyone if someone hits you, and then you hit them back and you can kill them in a single 5 damage swing. Like that's pretty huge. So like the Vandal is just like the king of the empty charge opener. And like from my perspective, I think he's probably one of the instigators along with the Gnarl Scar to just like run in. But like the Gnarl Scar is not as much of an empty charge. The Gnarl Scar is the one that has the bionic arm, and he also has an auto pistol. For any of the listeners that don't know, he runs in, shoots somebody with his pistol, punches them with his arm, and then flips back to conceal if he is alive and not frenzied. And in the meantime, here's a quick little spiel about Crossfire again. We will also have ad-free versions of the podcast available on Patreon.
Jason, how are you liking your Crossfire Games token set?
The Crossfire Games token set is absolutely amazing. I have a little kill team backpack that I put my kill team in, put all my tokens in, and now instead of having a bunch of little sandwich bags and a tin that I put my tokens in, I have it all in this nice little box with the scorecard and everything. So, like, when I unpack for a game, there's just the kill team and then this box, and it just feels so much more like mobile and organized. And like the quality of the tokens is really, really good. The like vibrancy of the colors is amazing. Super convenient to have all of the universal equipment in there as well. I am extremely impressed by it and very, very glad to have it. What about you?
Yeah, I think I was very impressed. Like, I agreed to kind of at least take a look at it. Having seen them at Worlds, I knew that the print quality was pretty good. But I think in person, the 3D printing, there's a lot of different kinds of 3D printing at this point, and I think FDM printing has come a long way. And the token set is quite nice, and it's nicer than the actual GW set, mostly because I can still see the tokens when they're off, just because they're black and not blue, dark blue that blends in with the board. So I appreciate that part. And I like that on the set that I have, there's room for like the specific tokens for your faction too, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, the faction tokens and the universal tokens and the like all of your basic order tokens and everything all fit in one little box that fits within the box. And with that, like you can probably even fit more. Yeah, it's pretty sick.
So definitely a fan of the product, and if anyone supports us, honestly, be great. I think my big thing is chaos boxes just make games take longer, and people got to play faster. And having organization definitely helps there. Having your engaged tokens in one spot and your concealed tokens in another, and like your recover items and all that other stuff. Organization makes for a cleaner game, keeps your brain in a better spot for playing, and I think these sorts of tools are great, whether it's Crossfire Games or other things. Having some organization is quite important.
Yep, definitely highly recommend it. And back to the episode.
Something I've started doing against teams that don't have that you can kill in melee, that don't have like melee operatives that actually beat you, is giving +1 APL to the Gorehorn. The guy that's got champion, the guy that can fight twice.
The guy that adds skulls to his axe every time he kills someone.
Yeah, and it's this one is really funny. And then just trying to just send him up the board using the leader's ability. And if you've got, you can just play with initiative. That's also one very important thing with Fellgor. Your leader's ability is insane. Like you can just see, oh yeah, that's your charge range. So I'm just going to sit like half an inch outside, and if I win initiative, I'll just dash him within range.
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't know, the leader of the Fellgor, one of the biggest reasons why the Fellgor are so brutal when they're ahead is that you have an ability called, what is it called? That's not call the kill. That's the
call the attack.
It's call the attack. Call the attack. So call the attack. The way you work it is, if you're out activating your opponent, you stage up models in like a cluster of 3 just outside of your opponent's charge and shoot range at the midboard as you out activate them. And then on the next turn, if you win initiative, you yell at a dude within 6 inches of you, you point at him in the middle, and then all of them scatter. And the one that you want to go do the offensive thing will run up the board, and then everyone else like splits up and hides again. But you can basically play both ends of the initiative. If you lose, those 3 can scatter backwards, and if you win, you scatter like the 2 forward that you want to have as bait. So you have a lot of flexibility. This is something that Caster can do with relocate, which is why Inquisition agents were really annoying for a little bit. And also, recon sweep for the old Pathfinders could do. And there's not a ton of teams with reactive initiative moves, so being able to play both ends of the offensive defensive spectrum on a thing that people can't interact with, definitely a reason why Fellgor are very good right now.
That is really good. And if you do it,
to be fair, some of the elf teams can also kind of do this right now with Dirgemaw and I think the Corsairs, Kurnathi, who can basically go ahead of people. So it's kind of a similar version.
But it is different.
It's not the same. It's not the same.
It is not the same. It is not as good.
Yeah, no.
I'll just say that.
The Fellgor one is very good.
Not as good. It is, the Fellgor one is extremely strong because what I was trying to explain is that if you do it on the Gorehorn and you've given him +1 APL and you're against a team you can actually kill in melee, what you're threatening is possibly imagine you've got the +1 inch to a charge, so you've got a 9-inch charge after a 3-inch dash. That is 12 inches of movement. And then if you kill the first thing, you can spend a command point to do a 3-inch charge as well. So that is 15 inches of movement for one operative from one turning point to the other. That heals, and that gets more damage on the crit. That is really annoying.
And with the third APL, he'll fight again.
Yeah, that's
and then
what I
when
was
he
saying.
dies, he falls on the floor and then gets back up like Rabute Gilliman without rolling a 3-hit save. And the next turn, the frenzied dude kills one more dude on the way.
Oh, he just charges and just one-shots someone. This is so fun. I feel like that's potentially a really big threat. And because you've got the leader's ability, you can make it so that he's potentially safe. Like, if the enemy has like one option to go and kill him after you give him that APL, you might be able to just prevent that option from just ever existing using your leader's ability. So you've got completely uninteractable potential double kill on turning point 2. That is extremely reliable because you've got Ambush, which is one of the best ploys in the game. Just straight up one of the best ploys in the game.
Yeah, I don't agree with them getting a buff on him.
I'm just confused. I'm confused as well as why they got that. That is insane. Like, you just like statistically, that is an extreme.
It is hilarious to me that Fellgor made it through the edition with a layer of buffs so massive compared to where they were at the end of last edition that everyone didn't realize it because everyone was out being worried about Marines. I was like, oh, this team.
No, I think a lot of people realized it, but you just look at like Legionnaires and you're like, what am I doing with that?
Yeah,
anyways,
and old Hierotech shut it down too.
That's true.
You don't have crits. You don't have crits. Oh yeah, well. It's 3 hits in melee. Oh, you're just dead. Oh well, that's unlucky.
But here we are in the post-Age Slate world in elves, and Fellgor just waiting to bop all the elves background.
Yeah. I feel like they're very, very good. That's like they're really pleasant to play as well.
So who are you having more fun playing, Augustin? You know, we were talking about Ratlings in the pre-show workup, and we've been talking about Fellgor this whole time. But do you have a preference? Because you also were playing Inquisition agents at Worlds, so I've seen you on all the way Horde, mixed, and now all melee. Where's your heart lie?
I am a Horde player, so I'm gonna have to say Ratlings, because I'm also a horrible person, and just that team makes for like the most frustrating games for my opponents. It is insane how control heavy that team is. I feel like they have like in certain this is a very map dependent team, but they are truly something special.
Are you finding them better on In the Dark or Volcus? Because I know on Volcus, the Ratlings basically have to sit on the floor to actually see shooting lanes, because the moment you're on top of a building, your head is too short most of the time. Unless you're like in the middle of, I think, like the Volcus big box, there's like that U that's now accessible, which you can actually see through in a couple of the windows. Whereas on In the Dark, it's just a flat plane and you can just set up shop.
So it actually depends on the map. There's Volcus maps that I actually quite like, because Larcenous and their interaction with the mission is potentially just a game winning instantly. Like, you just play like upload, like that is just completely unplayable on certain maps against Ratlings. Like, just can't prevent it. Like, the guy comes out from like behind the wall using behind the door, appears from like the other side of the door using Scarper, and then just moves dashes on your point through mission action. Or you don't have upload anymore. You're sitting on the point. I'm forced to charge you. Well, I'll still take the point. That is horrible. It's truly horrible.
Yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, the Ratlings can Scarper, so that's like dash at the end of your turn, and then Larcenous will let you like empty charge, where they'll charge you, but instead of fighting you, just steal your objective.
Taking holes with mission actions is real rough against
what Larcenous does. Yeah. It's
against
just a better
and
version.
Ratlings.
Yeah. It's just a better version of the crude one, because the crude one can't be done in melee. So what Larcenous does is that you can perform a mission action while within control range and without controlling the objective. So the opponent can have like a Space Marine icon bearer that counts as like 4 APL on the point. You just don't care. You're still going to do the mission action on it, and you can actually do it within control range. So there is no escaping that. And on certain like Volkus layouts, you can just stay like relatively safe and constantly threatening that play, which is why I feel like they're not that bad on Volkus. But yeah, there's still the problem. Just can't see anything. Please help. But there's some maps that are playable. But ITD is also layout dependent. There's some layouts that are just completely unplayable. If you're playing against Ratlings, if you don't have access to super conceal, you're just not getting up into the big rooms at all. And if there's only one big room and you've got to cross the door to get on towards the other sides, well, there's going to be a tripwire behind each of those doors. Tripwire means your models just might as well not exist. Like generally, like even if you're playing Space Marine, that's like a Space Marine gone for 2 entire turning points. Like, yeah, that is just completely illegal. And you can also put equipment on top of those mines because they aren't equipment. So you can
just a wall of garbage.
Yeah,
you've just been playing Home Alone, and your opponent has finally opened the door and zapped themselves.
Yeah, that's literally what happens. The guy tries to move towards your side. Oh, you're -1 APL until the end of your next activation. So if it's not a Space Marine, that model's just gone, just straight up, because it's now in the middle of the open and is getting shot by sniper rifles. And if it's a Space Marine, cool, he's dashed outside the door, and now he's gonna go and hide back into the room he came from, and he's not gonna do anything for an entire turning point after this one. So yeah, it's just that is not legal. But I don't think the team is competitive without it. Currently, I think the team has really strong upsides.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that now this edition in the dark is definitely more of the shooting team favored matchups, just because there's not a lot of terrain and there's big open rooms. So now it's like your opponent has to find a place to set up or stage, but the only staging points are ones you make. And a lot of the shooting teams have a way to do seek light or just rig a room so it's just annoying to move around in. And that's such a huge part of the map compared to Volkus, which is now staging point the whole map.
Yeah, I feel like
with Ratlings, at least
with Ratlings, like you really want to use a lot of the universal equipment to have extra staging points, like use light barricades and super concealed to be able to set up more like shooting lanes and more threatening positions and stuff like that. And I also, one of the things that was kind of like on my agenda to talk about with Ratlings for today is like who are the 3 best operatives for performing larcenous, because it's like every game there's 3 different opportunities that you can use larcenous to steal your opponent's objectives, and they're probably going to die for it. So the one of them, in my opinion, is the Stash Master, because he's got a free mission action, so you can really just zip and go places and then just do a free mission action, and if he dies, that's fine. One of them is the Hard Bit, because if he, especially if you've like dinged someone, and then you charge them with the Hard Bit and you steal the objective, and then they attack you, and then the Hard Bit kills them anyways, because he fights first. It's pretty rude.
Yeah, that is pretty funny, but I don't think you just bring the Hard Bit at all, unless you're playing against like Guardsmen, or maybe Elves and you're feeling lucky. Because the operative's just too unreliable. Like your 3 attacks on melee if you're not the one initiating the fight. Your 6 wounds, so yeah, no, you're just not bringing in 2 elves because 6 damage power weapon. You die in 1 hit. I just like the operative's like potential is like really good, but like it's just too much effort, too much setup. It's too difficult to actually make it work. That I feel like you just like, for example, on ITD. I've started just bringing like a normal sniper, like just normal guy, hits on 2s, just, yeah, well, yeah, it's just good.
Yeah, being able to put a bullet in your opponent's head on 2s in an edition where almost everyone hits on 3s or 4s is very useful. Coming from a player who's been testing some of these medium 4-up shooting teams.
And you just completely whiff every time. I mean,
I don't know, man. I threw a grenade. I threw a grenade yesterday with accurate 2, and I got 2 hits on both targets. I was like, cool, thank you. Because I was hitting on 3s with accurate 2. I was on a thing. I had accurate 1 from a guy below me. I threw a grenade and it did nothing. I was like, Excellent. So yeah, hitting on twos, very nice.
Oh, it's very, very pleasant.
And I think me and Jason were actually theorizing this when the team got released. Is like, I don't know, some of the dorks might actually be relevant on this team just because you want the reliability of this guy is going to take,
Just hitting on twos
3
is...
to 12 damage.
Because at some point you're fighting for a last slot, and you might not be on a map where like the dog does anything. You might not be on a map where you might not be against a team where you feel like the hard bit's gonna do anything. And if you're on ITD, you don't really want the slingshot guy anyways. So that last slot is like, yeah, I mean, I could take an operative, but sniper rifle is also good. Like, very simple analysis, but in a lot of cases, I feel like this is what it comes down to.
Yeah, like every single choice is potentially valid.
Yeah, I guess you're used to that, having been an Inquisition Agents player.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh my god.
Do you have general rules for players who are interested in playing Ratlings? Because Ratlings are one of the teams with the most loadout choices right now, between the 3 Ogre, free ploys, a million halflings. What have you basically fallen on? Always take 3 Ogre, or are you at some mix most of the time?
I am mixing every time. I like the Bullgrins, the Ogrins as well. Like, they're both pretty good, but they both do different things. Bullgrins are very annoying to charge and to just come in within 2 and shoot, because you potentially have a 4-up save. And going from like 4-up to 5-up means you actually get, if you get charged, you might actually make 1 or 2 saves if you're on a 4-up. Whereas only if you're 5-up, it's like 1 out of 3s. So you potentially reduce the damage you take by like 50%, which is pretty big on some against certain.
Especially on a 16 wound model.
Yeah, that is really, really annoying. But Orquins have the upside of just charging and just not doing anything, which is really nice. I really like doing that, because you just charge a model that's already activated, but you just don't want to kill it. So you just do the D3+1 mortals. And then you're like, oh, but I can actually one-shot him and not take any damage in return. Oh, I might actually kill him now. Like, you can make that choice after you've charged.
The Ogren have like upside against the 8 wound elf teams, right? Because
they have
like 3 Ogren can basically solo 3 elves, and they don't have to do it that dangerously, because you could just charge, and then if you hit the 3 damage or the 4 damage, God forbid, you just go into melee and just finish it off.
Yeah, exactly. If you do like 3 damage to the elf on the charge, you might just be like, oh, I'll just gamble for a crit with balanced. And if you get a crit, they're just dead. There's no answer. That's just like, yeah, cool. Now you've got a 16 win Ogrins that's in cover. Good luck.
And are there any consistent... So it sounds like with Ogren and the Bullgrin, it's kind of mix and match based on the matchup and what the wound count is. If your opponent, you expect your opponent is bigger, you probably take the Bullgrin, I assume, with shields, like the Astartes, because you brick wall them much easier. And against squishier targets, you're going to take the Ogren, because if you hit them with the D3+1 damage from the belly bump, now suddenly you just get free kills, or you just have free threatening, which is very good. And then when it comes to the Ratlings, we talked a little bit how the final Ratling slot goes between the hard bit and the slingshot guy, depending on the map, or sometimes just a sniper. But there's probably a couple of the Ratling like generic operatives that you probably always take. I assume the Ratling bomber is a must take, just because he throws more garbage onto the map. Like anyone that applies more statuses to the map is just like you always take them at this point.
And the tripwires are so devastating. Like, they are so incredibly painful to deal with for any team. There is no one that's having fun. No one is having fun. And you get to just set up like completely, like, that is something I really like, is like creating like kind of like forts, like just small position where like the opponent just could not interact with it efficiently. And that team does that so well, because you're just gonna put, oh, there's a mine here, and then there's like the barbed wire on that side, so you can't come through that side, so you have to hit the mine, but you've only got like 2 operatives there, so you can't actually set up correctly. It's just horrible for everyone. That's what I love. And then they've got all the little guys that are just really annoying. Like, if you place them, position them really well, they're just really annoying to actually like get out of position. but it's a team that demands control. Like it demands you knowing exactly what's going to happen and knowing exactly what the opponent can do. I think this is a very high skill ceiling team, and it's a team that's very skill intensive. Like you've got teams that you just do fine with, just at the base, because the team's really good. But Ratlings is it only stat checks a certain amount of teams. Like you can stat check like Deathcore, just throwing them like ball grins, and you just say catch, basically.
Catch a 16 wound dude that instant kills any of your dorks on a charge.
Yeah,
and it's a 40 millimeter base, so on the charge you might tag a couple dudes, and those guys just have to run away.
Yeah, you just throw them stuff, and then they just counteract. But it's if you're dealing with like elves, then all of a sudden you have to pay extreme attention to how you position. It's not an easy team to play. It is most definitely not easy. I think it's one of the hardest teams to play right now if you want to play it at a high level, because Scarpa has such a high ceiling in terms of like what you can do with it and the way you sequence it. Because you can't Scarpa every time you're going to want to Scarpa, and there's Scarpas you want to do at certain timings, and there's Scarpas you want to do later. Do not show what you want to do. And it's very hard to actually get the order correctly. It's very hard to get it wrong and just be like, oh, I can't Scarpa there. Oh, wow, my plan's just gone. It's a very complicated.
Your opponent can like move into positions to block Scarpers too if they can get visibility if you're within 3 of them, right? So as your opponents get a little bit closer, your Scarper windows tighten up a little bit.
But the team is very good. It's very good. The tripwires are such a big part of the team. If you play them ITD, they make the team actually function on that map. But
your opponents haven't quite gotten to the portable barricades to jump through the walls yet.
I mean, what am I supposed to say about that?
That's the nightmare, you know. Someone brings a portable barricade, opens the door, climbs over the barricade, and jumps through the door and goes over the trip mine. To be fair, it is a 3-inch movement tech, so only elves can really use it to get around a trip mine.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an option.
That's basically the only way to really get around trip mines, at least on In the Dark. I think on In the Dark, it does sound like Ratlings have kind of the lay of the land, since it's mostly a 2D plane. There's no real pieces of terrain to, get over the trip mines or the mines. You're kind of forced to interact with them unless you bring a 3-inch movement penalty or a 2-inch movement penalty, which is probably only going to make sense when you're trying to block your opponent off into their starting room. So maybe a portable barricade to jump over could make sense there, but that's basically it. And then on open, when you actually have terrain to run around and jump off of, maybe they're a little bit harder. Have you found like certain Volcus maps are easier, like the 6-inch deployment maps or the 3-inch deployment maps tend to be easier or harder because you're constraining the movement lanes your opponent has?
I think I'll just check because I've got them here.
Do you have a sheet of notes on all the maps where you've drawn
the
conspiracy plans with a line running back and forth? Like, if I put the mine here, the trip mine goes over here.
No, because there's like some like pretty defined layouts where I've like got something, but I'm like, yeah, this is just what I'm gonna do. So like map 3 is actually quite decent. Whatever happens, because you can you can just lock down completely like the top side of the map. I don't know if you can show it or anything, but map 3 is really nice because you can just make the top part of the map just completely uninteractable.
So map 3, for listeners who don't know, that's the one with the L-shaped rune right in the middle.
Yes.
And the 3 objectives are basically along a diagonal line. So that L-shaped rune in the middle is overlooked by the 2 stronghold boxes on a 6-inch deployment. So both sides get vantage looking in. But because there's a heavy wall in the middle, melee pieces can stage up. But if you're playing the Ratlings, you can just wall off all of the movement because the L-shaped ruin next to the small box is like a tight corridor. And I found it pretty useful as a Pathfinder player in that area because you can just drop a bunch of stuff and just slow out that entire lane and force your opponent into the open side, which is better for the shooting team.
I mean, yeah, whatever happens, they just can't go through the top side of the map. Like you can basically cut like the map in half with just a barbed wire and like 2 tripwires, and then the opponent has to go through like the open and just exposes himself to just you moving and shooting him. And if he wants to go on engage, he just gets shot to pieces. Like, this is just bad. Like some Volcus maps are better for Ratlings. I think this is a map.
Yeah. What's an example of a map that's bad for Ratlings? Just so that for anyone who's listening and kind of already knows the maps, we can talk a little bit about what makes them good. So map 3 is one of the ones where you can constrain your opponent to an open side of the map, because the denser side of the map you just drop barbed wire, trip mine, mines, and your opponent basically, no matter where they go, they're going to either take chip damage, 2-inch movement penalty, or minus APL penalties, which basically just stalls out that side of the map. So that's an example of a good map for Ratlings, just because there's a lot of small corridors.
It's hard, but I'd say map 5 doesn't seem like a very good map for Ratlings, because there's like one objective in the middle that's got heavy cover.
Yeah.
That's really open, and basically if the opponent has like decent melee operatives, he just anything, he just barks in on the middle and just asks you to answer it. And whatever side you are on, you can't really prevent him from like going over like the stronghold walls and then charging your models. So yeah, I would say this is not a very good Ratlings map.
Yeah, and for anyone who doesn't know what map 5 looks like, it's one of the more open mid-board 3-inch deployment maps. So there's a lot more wide area where there's just open space. And because Ratlings can only set up stuff on their half of the board, it means that your opponent has a lot more room to find holes in like the Great Wall of the Ratlings to run a melee operative and like pierce the veil and find a 6-wound dude hiding behind a wall. Like, please don't shoot me. So when you have these big wide spaces where you can't really force your opponent through a movement lane, it seems like that would be the issue. So that's why In the Dark feels so good, because you know at the halfway point where people are going to come through on the doors. So you just trap up the doors and your opponent is stuck. But on Volcus, or I suppose if we ever go back to an Octarius world or whatever the next set of terrain is, I assume they will have one. That's what you're thinking about as a Ratling player. How can I constrain my opponent to at least one side of the board so that I can have a strong side, a weak side? Right?
Yeah. It's about controlling where they can come from, because if you lose that control, and the enemy gets up to the mid-board, and you can't control the entire mid-board, they just get to threaten charges or just move shoots that you can't answer efficiently. Whereas if they have to like spend all their movement going to the middle, and they have very few options afterwards, except getting shot to pieces or charged by an Ogren instantly, it's like you want to be able to control the engagement you take with Ratlings. If it's one of the more controlling teams. It is probably the most controlling team. Because if one thing starts to go wrong, you start losing a flank, then everything goes bad. Like, you're gonna get charged, killed, and then there might not be anything to answer it. It's like,
so we've talked about earlier in the podcast episode, we were talking about how Fellgor, checked the Eldar very well. And I'm curious, since we're talking about, teams that can outmaneuver you now, obviously Astartes, there's only 6 of them, so they only have so many movement lanes they can go in through. But obviously, if we look over at the Elves on 28mm bases, 25mm bases, do they happen to present bigger issues to you on Volcus? Whereas I assume on In the Dark, you're pretty good at taking all comers just because of how good the doors are at constricting Ratling, like, shooting space. But on Volcus, Banshees, Jason loves running 8 Banshees. They just teleport everywhere and just appear in your backline.
If you look at, I'd imagine that matchup would be absolutely terrible, because you just get killed in one crit, and then the Banshee can shoot the guy that's next to him and pretty reliably kill him if he's not
just
like,
even jump and flip over all the terrain and like jump past all of the obstacles and just like don't care about anything. It's craziness.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of other matchups that would theoretically be kind of scary, Vespid would be kind of scary too, because they just ignore all the mines. And we're talking about how stray Vespid shooting does about 6 damage, which is the number you have to hit for Rattling.
Yeah, but the issue with Vespid is like you go 1-for-1, they just lose.
Oh yeah. No, there's not
No, you
enough
just
Vespid right now.
yeah, there's like not enough Vespids to actually kill the entire team because Vespids can't do double kills. They just can't, unless they get a blast. But a blast is like is very difficult to get. Like unless they get a blast, they just can't get double kills. And if you just shoot them with a sniper rifle, they're just
They've
dead.
got a sky torch, you know. They fly over you, hit a couple dudes.
Yeah, the
the
flamethrower. Yeah, the flamethrower. That's just does nothing.
If only it was a neutron flamethrower, so it could get piercing 1.
Piercing
then
1
maybe
would
it
actually.
be.
Oh, maybe you'd actually bring it if that were the case.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Yeah,
Anyways, it's just one of those like stray thoughts. It's like, you know, they avoid the biggest traps of the Ratlings, which is all of the movement traps, and you just generally do about 3 to 6 damage on a shooting sequence when you have moved and shot.
So 3 damage weapons, 3 damage shooting weapons are actually quite decent. Like even with just a bolter, if you start shooting at a Ratling, the Ratling's just dead. Like just the bolt pistol, normal bolt pistol. If the Ratling like is not in cover, he's just dead. Like 90% of the time. It is rough. It is rough. It gets rough very quickly with this team. But it's also a team where you've got a very large amount of control over what's going on the map, and that's why I like the team a lot, because I like knowing what's going to happen and what my opponent can do.
Yeah, you can restrict your opponent's decision tree around all of the stuff that you've placed, and if your opponent finds a way around that, suddenly you've gone into a route, and it's back to the drawing board. We're gonna have to get new ogre, get new tools, find a new fixer, or go back to the drawing board.
Suddenly you start asking questions like, how did I not see that? But this has yet to happen to me, but I know it's come quite close a few times to just go like quite bad. The team has a tendency to absolutely crumble if a few things don't go
that's kind
right.
of how like the shooting, that's how the hordes tend to feel. Everything's going well until a couple dice rolls go wrong, and you're like, oh no, I've lost 3 guys.
Oh, they're all dead now? Wow, I didn't realize they were all dead. But like, for example, Fellgor would be a really bad matchup on certain Volcus maps for Ratlings, because you can, if you don't have to go through those bad shooting lanes, you've got insane charge range, and if like there's the +1 APL Gorehorn I talked about, that's 2 bottles dead, and you still have to answer, that bottle. The Gorehorn's not going to die fighting your Ratling. And you're not going to charge.
He's probably not even going to take any damage.
He's not taking damage, probably.
If he does take damage, he's going to heal up immediately, and then the Psyker in the background is like, oh, he's taken 3 wounds. Oh, he's back to full health.
Oh, that one is absolutely disgusting. Like, if you don't, Fellgor is a team that really punishes players that don't know what it does. Like, this is one of the most punishing teams.
To be fair, it feels like Fellgor punish everyone right now, as far as where the meta is.
Yeah, they are some sort of like boogeyman currently, because they're just really scary to play against. And a lot of teams don't have the tools to efficiently deal with them. I think this is like the final word on Fellgor is, can you efficiently deal with them? Like, do you have a way of actually like killing them reliably? Getting crits reliably. Like, are you like Hand of the Archon with like Crimson Duelist? Because that operative is potentially quite good. But that is if the Fellgor you're fighting is not within range of the gong. Then it's just, oh well, I'm crying.
The gong is the first one to die, and the Psyker is the second one to die, and everything else you have to manage.
I mean, if the opponent cannot remove the god, that team is so reliant on like a few operatives. It is kind of crazy. The leader is extremely important. So if you can snipe him early on, the team's like kind of kneecapped. Same thing with the gong. Those 2 operatives are like so much of like the power budget of Fellgor's. It is quite incredible. Like that is what makes the team so scary. And the gong is what allows you to fight Space Marines, basically, because the 4/5 damage chainswords just mean you can die in 3 hits, not 2. One of the bad matchups, or matchups that make it that you can actually face with Fellgor and actually are likely to face, is Nemesis Claw. They're quite bad for Fellgor to deal with, because they've got the D3 damage on the charge. And that actually changes breakpoints a lot. Because even if you're only dealing 4 damage per head, there's a good chance you can actually kill them in 2 hits if you roll like a 3-up on the mortals. I just have like a lot of those like stray thoughts where I'm just like, yeah, I remember that. Like, I tend to jump
then a
between
stray
ideas.
Marine can charge a goat and actually like kill it all the way down to nothing,
in 2 hits,
which is something that most teams don't have a reliable way to do because you can't fight the Fellgor a second time after you do.
But you can actually do it through the gong. Is the important part.
Yeah.
Because the gong is going to be set up in extremely annoying positions that you can't do anything about. Within range of the leader, of course. So if you just really set up very aggressively to just try and alpha strike the gong, yeah, it's still not going to work.
And you can run away.
And you just dash him, and then he's out of range now. Wow, I'm having fun.
So, which team are you taking to a tournament right now? If you wanted to get a golden ticket to go back to Worlds, if you wanted to go back to Worlds,
I'd probably take Fellgor. They're probably the highest return. Yeah, they're probably the highest return, lowest investment team.
With room to be a better player and still find angles, right? The thing is, if you play them at a reasonable skill level, they're quite good. But if you find the way to use all of your operative special abilities to get chip damage in, to heal a little bit, to full heal with the Psyker, or to ping someone with pure Seek on Mindburn, you have a lot of room for you to find creative plays. And I think, Jason was playing around with like all warriors back in the day. Obviously, that's not where we're at now, but just the ability to have a raw 20 operative kill team effectively is really spooky.
Yeah, the team is it's just really, really good. There isn't much to say about it. The team has a lot of possibilities in terms of like managing breakpoints. It's literally the most important thing about this team is managing breakpoints. Like if you're dealing like the 7-win, 8-win teams, that's no problem. You don't have to ask yourself questions. You can just go normal game plan, just charge and kill. It will be fine. It will go well. Doesn't matter. But then you have to think when you're dealing with Space Marines. Space Marines require brain. To actually
a little bit of extra juice.
Yeah, it requires you to think, which is not exactly what you want to do when you're playing Fellgors. I understand that. I understand you want to play Fellgors and just run forward and just bonk people over the head with it. But it's really fun. It's really fun. But if you want to do well, you have to think. You have to play the mission. That team plays the mission surprisingly well. It is Fellgor. I know you don't want to do mission actions. I know it's not pleasant. I know you're not having fun if you're not charging and fighting somebody. But please do the mission actions.
Well, yeah, if your opponent is afraid of coming at you, then it's fine because you could just stand around.
Yeah, I mean, you just spark the gong on the point, and there's like no one to threaten him. That's just what are you doing?
I assume, as a Fellgor player, in a surprising twist of fate, confirm kill is just the always tack up because you just.
Nearly, yeah. I think it's an 80%. Like it's there on 80% of the time. You can just secure it like you're dead. For information, you can secure your confirm kill token using the goats that are frenzied because they're still operatives. They're still in the kill zone, and if there's no one to contest it, they're still considered to be there. You still have an operative.
They have one APL and and all the other things.
They contest, and if they control, you have it. That's really good. That's slightly good.
Yeah, one of those cases where confirm kill is absolutely better than plant signal beacons because all you want to do is make sure your opponent is dead by the end of the match.
Yeah, I mean, you want to make it so scary to get to like most times now in terms of layouts, you're going to have a middle objective. And you basically want to stage so that your opponent just can't stay on it. And if you get to do that, you're going to get confirmed kills. You're going to get whatever you want. Like it's just the one way you can lose is by someone just playing like a completely uninteractive team and just linking off a few of your models, just playing the attack ops better than you. Like that is one of the
maybe
traps.
Phobos could run around them, plant signal beacons, get out of dodge. You've got Omni Scramble to stall out your Gorehorn charges or your Call the Attack charges. So there's maybe a couple teams that can kind of do it, but I would assume, Jason, you're the Phobos player. Do you feel like Fellgor are manageable right now?
I mean, I do feel like Phobos has a pretty good game, but that could super duper go either way. It's definitely a spooky one because I mean, the Call the Attack just getting Omni scrambled is like Fellgor's biggest nightmare. I mean, one of them. And like you said, just kind of like doing the tac ops better and only engaging when they've got you like completely trapped. Plus like a bunch of stun grenades. If they just like go like lurk onto a rooftop where you can't charge them at all and then start throwing stun grenades at you. That's rude.
You got 4 stun grenades, just
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't even need smoke grenades at that point. You just
No.
just run around and chuck stun grenades and just like troll people.
Yeah, I mean I think that is actually a valid strategy if you've got the APL to spare.
Yeah, and then if you're just like lurking and trying to like, I don't know, it's at that point you probably don't even lurk. It's just you jump up onto a rooftop and you shoot down on people with reavers, and then they can't charge you back. And now all of a sudden it's a shoot off, and Fellgor aren't going to win a shoot off.
No,
You're just like shooting down from vantages.
Yeah. Honestly, right now, like, what do you guys feel about the meta? Do you like it? Do you think it's better than what we had previously?
I like it a lot.
This current data slate is much, much better than release. Like on release, I read all of the rules and I thought Warp Coven were clearly a cut above everybody else just from like raw power. I didn't even see the 9-inch completely uninteractable blast bubble. I just saw all the raw rules they had. I was like, oh, this is clearly the best. And then Inquisition also seemed like clearly way better than all the other shooting teams. So I think the clear winners and losers were way too far out in the very release of the game. And then now I feel like we're in a better spot where at least things are all like reasonably playable. Like you might not win a big tournament with some of the lesser, like the shooting teams are really suffering right now because they've lost a lot of structural changes that let shooting teams play the game before. At least 2 APL shooting teams, of which there are a bunch of in the game. If you're a shooting forward team right now, the move to 3 objectives means that your opponents are never really risking themselves unless they want to let you shoot or for whatever reason. So there's not really a reason to do that. And the turn to not having scoring on turn 1 means that your opponent really can just hide on the first turn and never give you a shot. So the only way shooting teams can interact with the game is to bait your opponent into shooting you first, which there's no real reason to do. Like, you know, you put yourself on engage and just stand out there. But like, what are we doing here? Like, that's not a good plan. So I feel like most of the shooting teams are structurally not good right now because the game is like left them behind. Like all of the reasonable shooting teams have some melee component because the game is just played over turns 2 through 4, which I think is good for the most part because the game is like much more frenetic. People like melee, so everyone gets to do a little bit of the thing that everybody likes doing. But you know, I will say as a player that likes guns, like I like Warhammer 40k because they're big guns and scary guns. It's a little sad.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think that the meta right now is so exciting because of all of the different things that people... everyone's been saying slightly different things about what they think is best, and there's like angles at everything that someone thinks is powerful, that there is like a backdoor that they can be beat, so there's no one that is just like running around being a horrible, feels bad menace to everyone. Like everyone is scared of someone, and that makes it very interesting for like, oh, what, like, we don't have a super, like, clear-cut S-tier team that just, like, blows everyone out of the water, and it kind of feels like the Wild West because of that.
You don't have, like, a hyper-tier team. You don't have, like, a Legionary Warp Coven that just beat everyone under them regardless, basically. You don't have just a team that's just better, but you don't have like old commandos, like 2nd edition commandos for like a long time that just didn't have bad matchups, basically.
Yeah, everyone has at least one thing. It's very matchup dependent, which for better or for worse, I think at least it's better than where we were. So I think if we go one more step past this and we move down on like maybe Fellgor get a little bit of a nerf, at least on the stats, like bring them back down to 10 wounds at least, just so that their breakpoints are consistent. And then maybe we need to find some way to make the the bad teams more playable. But I do kind of feel like shooting teams just are not it right now, just because the game has moved on from letting you play a shooting forward plan, unless all the shooting teams have way more movement for some reason. Just because getting that first shot off is basically impossible now on turn one. So it's got to be somewhere in turn two, and your opponent's already scoring points by then. So it's just hard for shooting teams that can only shoot. Like Casterkin are not playable right now by every metric because they just never kill anything that they need to kill. And I think that's a little sad.
Yeah. Caster can just like shoot you down to 1 health and then die, and that's their whole game plan.
Are you enjoying this current meta that feels a little bit more matchup-y? Like everyone's got their boogeyman, but they've also got, a lot of 60-40s.
I enjoyed the meta much more than what we had just pre-data slate. I feel like you just get to play the game. You just get to play certain teams that might not be meta. You get to play like what's like generally considered like A-tier teams. Like those actually are playable now. You can play them in tournament and actually do well. Because I'm sorry, but if you're playing against like other really good players, before the data slate, you just couldn't bring one of those. Like it was completely legal to bring like something that's not that good against like a higher tech circle. You just don't get to play the game. Like the previous meta was like probably the worst one I've seen. I've started playing a bit after like the Chaos Cult release,
which is also pretty bad.
No,
those were the dark times.
I didn't play in that meta, so I can't say it was the worst. But since that meta, the worst I've seen was the pre-data slate one of third edition.
And since we're here and you're part of France, tell us a little bit about how the data slate has kind of reinvigorated the area, if you were. Because I know, for me and Jason, we do a week-to-week stat show on Patreon, just looking at BCP stats for fun. And there was definitely an uptick of interest right after the data slate. And it's kind of maintained. We're like a stable 400, sometimes 500 players, which is pretty good for Kill Team. So I assume in France, it's probably felt like, people want to go out and play, and there's more teams that you're playing. And, talk a little bit about your local region, who you play with, who your TOs are, anything that you want to talk about, since part of the fun is connecting communities around the globe on Just Another Kill Team podcast.
Okay, so what do I start with? So there's I can start with talking about like tournaments. So first off, if you want to do a tournament in France, if you want to attend one, I don't know if there's still space. I'm sorry, I don't know that, but there's like a big tournament organized by Le Lunette, Francois, which was at Worlds. One of the guys at Worlds. The guy was playing Void Dancer.
Beautiful Void Dancer team. I think he won Best Painted too.
I think he won. He did win Best Painted. He's more of an artist now than a painter, but he's also like a really large tournament organizer. Oh man, English is complicated. I think he is the one organizing WTC. So yes. And he's doing an event in Paris in March, I believe. Might be wrong. He's gonna yell at me after this one.
We'll have links to the show notes. We'll ping Linouette and get all the local teams. So you're playing out of Linouette's tournament circuit, I guess, because there is a French tournament circuit for anyone who's listening and curious what other regions are doing. I know in Latin America they also have a similar, cross-country cultural rivalry. Yeah. So in France there's like a France-specific tournament, right?
So there's a tournament circuit that counts for points, and if you get a certain amount of points, you get to make like the top 8 tournament, which is a tournament where there's only like the 8 best players in France, or the 8 players that scored the most points during that circuit. And then there's and Lunette's tournament, which is a 40-plus player tournament for 6 rounds, is part of that circuit. But I think this one will have a golden ticket by itself. And then there's also a golden ticket, at least one for top 8. We don't have specifics yet. For the number of golden tickets we'll get this year, because we had a lot last year, like surprisingly.
I mean, France always has a large contingent at the World Championships, and last year was no different.
I mean, like, it was a lot of golden tickets for Kill Team, considering the number of players we had. because we got 4 tickets for like the top 8 or 3, I think, and then 1 for Lunet. And I got one. I could have gotten one at like and I got one at an international event, which I didn't need because I already had one. But yeah, we nearly had like 5 golden tickets last year, which is a lot. So yeah, really, we have the French scene is decently active. You've got a lot of players around. Well, of course, Paris. You've got, which has like the tournament every month, like basically a monthly tournament. So if you're in Paris, it might be worth checking that out. People are very nice there. I play in like every one of those tournaments. Yeah, it's just really fun. I've traumatized the local community, I think, at this point.
I mean, as one of the top 16 from Worlds who can go back, next year, obviously you're one of those institutions of competitive players in your area. So I assume the trauma comes for free for you.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah.
So you live in the Paris area and play out. Is there another tournament scene that someone more like closer to you, or is Paris like basically like the big stop for everybody who's playing Kill Team in your area?
Paris is a big stop. You've also got Lyon, which has a decently developed scene. Which has like you've got basically the big city, and then you've got a few things around it, and there's like the communities kind of combine there. So that's why it's also pretty significant. But yeah, Paris is a pretty big stop because you've got the big tournament of the year, which is League Nets with like 40 plus players, 6-round tournament. The only one we have like that in France. And yeah, that's basically the French scene. We've got a lot of tournaments actually that count towards the top 8 qualification. I think we've got like a bit less than a dozen or something. I think I've attended at least like 2 already, but it's really fun. The people are like super nice, and the community's great. Like, just community's really nice. That's why Kill Team is like so nice, is so good. It's like I've really enjoyed being at Worlds. Like the people there were like super nice. Like meeting everyone is great. It's like the best part of being there. I would say if you want to go to Worlds, don't go there for like the tournament. Go there for the people. That's why it's at, to be honest. Even as like a really competitive player,
it's as competitive as Kill Team is at Worlds. It's still very much everybody is there to enjoy other people. Like there's so many different cultures, which is part of the fun thing, and everyone's got their own cool hobby. People bring out their cool models. Last year we had a 50 model display board for Inquisition for every single Inquisition player. So, all of that stuff tends to be great, and it sounds like Paris has been growing. You guys have your 8-man invitational, send people to Worlds. It's not the first time you guys are sending people to Worlds. I assume this year was no different. You'll have more tickets, so you'll have more people. So we'll see everybody there, especially with the new ITC season just getting.
Oh yeah, just getting started. Yeah, this is going to be fun.
All right. Augustin, I just want to say thanks for coming on, talking a little bit about the Parisian scene, and going a little bit in depth on both Ratlings and Fellgor, because Fellgor.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I don't think I'm the best guest because I kind of just go around and just bounce everywhere. I'm not very clear about what I say, but it's been really fun. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. I mean, like I've been wanting to chat with someone that is as excited about Ratling and their crazy, just like control play style, like as I've been thinking, and I think you did a great job of kind of capturing that vibe.
Yeah, that team is so good on certain maps, like just terrifying. Like I don't know what you do against that on certain maps. I'm just like, I don't know what I don't think there's a way to win against them on certain maps. Just straight up, like if the guy's good.
I think there's probably certain matchups that are just probably not possible, right? If you're playing a 10 wide on In the Dark, because you don't have the movement, you're never going to get to them. But if you're playing against an elf team on In the Dark, they have some extra tools. You bring a jumping point to jump over a mine.
Nice. Oh my god, yeah.
So there probably are a handful of tools. Whether or not those tools are enough,
yeah, well, we'll see. I feel like the meta's in a very good place right now compared to before.
Yes, for sure.
Could be better. Could be better, but we always say it could be better. But right now it's good enough, I'd say.
Agreed.
Well, then, thank you very much for having me on. That was really nice. Thank you very much. You have a nice end of your day. It's 5.
Yeah. Have a great day, man.